Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, today we're going to be talking about preparing for an altcoin season. Now, I'm going to be talking about more about the middle to the end of stuff for in terms of altcoin season, right? Not really in terms of buying altcoins. We're kind of past that stage. I know some of you might be entering the cycle late. If you do want one-on-one help, then I highly recommend joining the Discord community. I will help you out there. But look, ladies and gentlemen, right? We are kind of getting closer and closer to the big thing, the big event, which is going to be, for me, the most thing I'm excited about is altcoin dominance hitting roughly 70%. Now, I don't know exactly how high it's going to go. I just think it's a high probability that it's going to be, hitting that 70 to 71%. There's always that chance that we might sweep these tops before reverse, but overall, it doesn't really matter too much. We are looking for the same thing to happen. Now, before I talk about that, I will talk about the micro level, right? If we go to something like the 4 hour chart, we can see we actually had this big pump all the way back, in early February. And that's when kind of Bitcoin crashed. Bitcoin dominance went up and altcoins crashed a ton. It was a crazy time. However, we are way past that point, and this little area actually is relevant because we can see it is a top, right? This little area is a top, and then when we look at relevant data, right, we can see the structure over here. There's another top, right? We're tapping it, right? We had a nice push to upside. Then we were retesting for multiple days to come. And then now recently we kind of gone from, let's just say, 64% to upwards of 65%. Now I do expect Bitcoin dominance to kind of just, take its time, probably up until 67% or so, maybe even a little bit less. There is some imbalance, right? When we go on the monthly candle, we can see this is a big red candle. Right? Once we kind of respect actually this 64 to 65% zone, we should kind of move decently fast up, right? Upwards of 56% fast, then upwards of 57.5% fast, and then we should start slowing down around like the 68.5 to 69%. That's when things will slow down and probably take a couple more days than, for example, from us going from 64% or 64.87 to 66 and 67.5, right? Overall, it is looking good. I don't expect any big, massive correction at this current moment, right? I don't expect anything like this to happen. It wouldn't really make sense. And, right, I do believe like I said, we will just be retesting off of the relevant zones, and we will get up to these red zones very quickly, right? Once that happens, right, we will probably peak out again between 70 to 74%. And look, we're going to know, right? The thing we are mainly looking for, ladies and gentlemen, is, it goes high as it's going to go. The higher, the better, to be honest. And then we're going to look for some type of consolidation on the smaller time frame, and then a big crash, most likely down to the low 60s%, just the way it was over here, right? I kind of wouldn't be surprised if price is going to be identical, or sorry, the percent is going to be identical, especially that we also do technically have two nice zones over here, right? Something like this. So crashing out between here, which is exactly perfect because we can see when we pull the zones back up, right? Practically going in between these two areas. So, right, once we look for this and this big crash, that is going to be the first sign that altcoin season is about to happen. And at that point, you are literally going to be able to, if you want to, put in your final money, because at that point it means things have probably pumped a good amount, and depending on the coin, you can still probably milk out another 2, 3, 4, or 5x, right? Maybe even 6, 7x depending on the coin. Once we start going sideways, right? You got to realize, those that will get in late and need so much confirmation. The more confirmation you need, the later you get in, obviously the less gains you're going to get. That is just how it is going to work, right? So we can see once we get this type of pump, we probably will consolidate for a couple of weeks. And then historically, we kind of just dump off, 4 to 6 weeks are kind of the prime, dumping zone, right? And that's when the coins are going to pump. You still have to pay attention to your individual coin because, some coins did actually peak, near the start of the dump, some peaked near halfway through the dump, and then some either peaked at the very bottom or that's when they had a decent double pump, right? If they pumped here first, then they had a decent double top here, right? Sorry, if they peaked in the first pump, then they had a decent double top. If they peaked at the second pump, right? If they peaked at this pump over here, then they probably had a decent first pump, right? And coins that actually peaked over here, this was their number one, and then this was their number two, and by number three, it was already way flat. So you really have to be paying attention to your own coin, right? Whether you are watching the videos, which sometimes do get pre-recorded in advance, so they might not be 100% up to date. They are still like 98%, 97. Obviously, if you're in the Discord community, then you will be getting up to date instantly. But yeah, look, things are going to be happening very, very quick. Overall, it is some of the last final buying opportunity, right? If we go to something like the dominance here for altcoins, we can see that we are very, very nice at some bottoms. Even if we were to go a little bit lower, I don't expect us to go much lower. And we can see what happened last time, right? It went a little bit lower here, and then all of a sudden, massive, massive reversals. 4.5 months later, we peaked at the first altcoin season top, right? That is just how it happened. So time is running out, people. Time is running out. Time is getting low, right? For me, this is one of those moments over the next few short weeks where it's like you're putting in your final bags. If you still want, premium prices, great prices, even good prices, obviously depending on the coin and depending on the range and the time you buy it. But overall, that is a general area that you're going to be buying. Right, even here objectively, right, we are decently low, right? This was the relevant top for our altcoins. This was pretty much the relevant bottom. We can see if we actually reverse it like the way it's supposed to, then we haven't even recovered in general over 30%, right? This is like 40%, 50%. So very good times to buy. But I did literally call out the reversals over here, right? A couple months ago saying, hey, coins will start pumping really, really heavy when we were right over here, and then boom, it went really fast, right? So the same thing is going to happen once again. I do expect coins to really, really start pumping super, super, super hard. Once we kind of start reclaiming levels, we're going to reclaim levels very quickly, right? Probably go up to somewhere over here, maybe minor pullback. Then once we burst, right, we're going to burst to here. And then once we reclaim this level, I do not see us going below like 340 billion because we have this zone, and then we're gonna have another zone, and then we have one top, we practically have two tops. We're gonna be looking for a third top, probably a little bit of a pullback, and we are gonna burst up, kind of the way we bursted up over here, right? It was a little bit different, but we can see it was very like up and down, but it was up and down to the upside and then burst up a rocket ship, right? So just prepare because altcoin season is much closer than further. And I'm super, super excited. I hope you guys are too. And I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.